So, my name is Kwabena. I'm talking about Africa and the Industrial Revolution. A lot of the times you hear people say that what has Africa contributed to the world? What has Africa contributed in terms of technology? And the Africans themselves, even in our statements, we say that technology, literally comes from the white man. So almost everything that has to do with technology comes from them, and anything that has to do with superstition and culture and dancing then comes from us. If you look at even what they showcase, when it comes to sports and entertainment, you see the image of the African. But when it comes to technology and advancement and engineering, it's almost as if that we are not part of that. And that is not necessarily true. If you look at the world history, where would the world be if there had been no slavery, colonization, and all those things that they subjugated us to? If you read the history of the world, let's say for the last 2,000 years, look at it, where the first 300 years, So the world history has been taught. The Africans understand, most Africans understand history from the Western European kind of history, and that is majorly what the world has come to know. But I think there is more to it. So let's say from the 13th, 15th century, 13th, 15th, 16th century, that's where they came to Africa, and they came to capture people. They sent them to England, and they did that. The Portuguese came, the Dutch came, and they came to build all these fortresses there, the dungeons, and they created a lot of wealth for the economies. They took a lot of minerals, resources. They cannot deny that. But when you go to the internet and you are trying to read about how they developed, they almost silent on this, the impact, the importance, the critical role that period played in the development of the world. I wonder where the world would have been had they not sacrificed us. So all the minerals they took, the work. If you had people working for you, millions of people working for you for 300 years, you will develop. Anybody else will develop. If the people had millions of wealth. So it's not so much about intelligence. It's a lot of the times it's about how much wealth that I have that I can play with. So the more money I have that I can try, the more mistakes I can make, and I can still keep going. So the West, yes, they may have had some few things that they did well, but largely a lot that they are trying to hide were mainly contributed by the Africans. So if you look at the first industrial revolution, they are talking of the steam engine and how they brought a lot of mechanization to agriculture. Don't forget the cotton and all those, how they were moving the minerals. How they built the race, those mainly could have happened earlier. Why didn't they happen? Why did they have to come for the slaves and to colonize Africa before those things started to happen? So there are a lot of questions that we probably would have to answer ourselves. Look at the second revolution. It's just about the same. So when they were building the cars, when they started to mass produce, that is the second industrial revolution. When they started to mass produce, those things happened just about 1870, to 1920, thereabout. Where was Africa? What were we doing? We need to find out those ourselves. Look at how they were partitioning us, how they were separating us, how they colonized us. And so during those times, we were not even a nation. So how could we take charge of those? So there is a lot of damage that has been done for the last 700 years or so to Africans. So a lot of the times when these things were happening, the Africans were not a nation. Even our kingdoms had been destroyed. The Ashantis the Asantes put a lot of fight, but they were alone. They were not joined by the others. So you cannot say that because the first industrial revolution, the second industrial revolution, even the third one, you can't say that the Africans have not played. We played a lot of roles. There are a lot of engineers who have come out. Just the little opportunities that we had, a lot of engineers have come out, especially from the from America, the African Americans. A lot of them played critical role, but they would want to hide them. Some of them built companies which were destroyed. Some of them were very rich, but they were constantly under threat, and they were destroyed. So I'm sure the same probably happened on the continent as well. So it's our duty as an African to go and study and find out which is true, which is not true. Don't just don't just look at the word from only the European sense of history. And that's why when you use that, then the Africans are nothing. Anytime you use that kind of lens as it has been portrayed, then the Africans are nothing. But if you use if you do a lot of research, you will see that maybe as a corporate body, as a group of people, we probably would not have done that. But though there were a lot of things that were put in place to make sure that we didn't come together to build countries. So Ghana is just about 60-something years, and yet most of these so-called revolutions happened way before, those years. So the first one started in the 18th, as they call it. But I think the first industrial revolution is not the one that started with the steam engine. So it's the one that the forces, the humans that they took, that worked for years, indentured. I think that was the revolution. That was the revolution, the first one. Because without it, nothing else would have happened. Nothing else would have happened. They can sideline that, they can try to hide that and downplay it, but you all know, and I know, most of these countries up to date will not even exist if you take Africa out. So we can still do something. We just have to make sure that it takes science, engineering, technology, mathematics to go through industrial revolution, because you're coming up with a lot of things that are science that would have to be science based or data based or technological based or the technology based, and those we should be equipped. And the other time I was studying the history of Africa and the history of the education in Ghana, and mainly they started with religious education. Religious education that they started with. They didn't even add maths, let alone financial education or entrepreneurship or things like that. No, they wanted us to be clerical, because they knew that if they added the other ones, then we will be that powerful, and then we will take charge of our own destiny. So going forward, if you want to train your children for them to play a role in our development, make sure that you add financial education to it. You make sure that a lot of our children, we should make sure that a lot of our children are having maths background, engineering background, science background. We should reduce the social sciences, because you have to go through this process to be able to build your own machine tools, machine part. Those are the industrial base, and if you got to go through that, then we have to do a lot. China did that. China closed a lot of things and worked for 40 to 50 years to build that, and that's why they are industrial power now. That's why they are industrial power now. Now, a lot of different kinds of industries they can build themselves because they've got the basis right. The other countries that have developed that sideline the basis, the machines, the tools, and who are trying to jump the line, they still have to rely on others. But back to back, China can do a lot on their own because they went through the processes, the basis, how to use the lathe machine, the turning machine, the boring machine, the drilling machine, the shaping, those things, how we can manufacture them. Once you can manufacture them, then you can play with metal and produce anything. Then you can add the electronics, then you can add the robotics. So now they are talking of virtual reality, AI, blockchain, all those, but they all are being built, or they built on the previous. So it's transfer. You get to this, you build. You get to this, you build. And I think that for us not to just be a continent that is only consuming, because it looks like that, but you'll be shocked that there are so many people who are producing all kind of products in their small corner with their friends or with their son or their daughter, because we have not come together to say that this is the agenda we want to take and this is how we want to develop. And the moment we come to that, we probably will develop, and more especially when we start to have confidence in displaying and purchasing the ones that we buy. Because there's no way that that boy who is producing that item in his workshop is going to grow if the people are not proud of buying the product that their people have produced. And one of the things that we would have to change will be the mindset of the people to be proud of what they produce. Everything that Ghanaians are producing, everything that Africans are producing, we should be proud in buying them. Because that's how they built businesses, and that's how all these countries developed. Because when the innovations came, when all those technologies came, it took business people who would take those and mass produce them, and which means that you're building entrepreneurs alongside the innovation, and then a population that is proud, that is that much proud to buy what is being produced. So it's a big subject. I've talked about what I see, and you can read them. Read history for the last 2,000 years, the last 4,000 years, the last 5,000 years, the last 10,000 years. Read them. You can't just look at the world only through the European sense, Judeo-Christian format. No, there are other things that we have to find and read. Read about the Chinese history. Read about the Arabs. They also did us a lot of damage. They took a lot of slaves from us, read about the African history. Go and search about the Asante history. Go and search about the Songhai history. Go to the Yoruba culture. Go and study about it. The Benin Empire or the Benin Kingdom. Go and study all those. They are very much important. You have to widen your mind, because we are living in a world that if you don't know yourself, and if you don't know what you're producing, and if you don't know why you should purchase from young people, then you'll be